How much credit does Wilson deserve for the Seahawks' success?
About 90%. I'm going to say it. I mean, listen, I understand that the Legion of Boom is the Legion of Boom, but that was from a few years ago. Let's be very, very clear. They haven't given him much to work with offensively. This man has had to carry this franchise on his back. And the numbers, to me, don't do him justice. Last year, he threw 35 touchdowns. The season before that, he threw 34 touchdowns. Just 11 interceptions that year, just 7 interceptions this past season, complete 65% of his passes, throwing for 3,448 yards. We get that, but I saw Ben Roethlisberger throw for 5,000 yards. So the 3,400 yards that Russell Wilson has thrown, clearly it's one of those situations where you've seen guys that have more exorbitant numbers. That doesn't tell the story of Russell Wilson. The story of Russell Wilson is that you haven't given him much of a running game. You gave him a compromised offensive line. The receivers are good, but they're not all world. You're constantly calling upon him to come and try to save the day. He's constantly called upon to have to extend plays and things of that nature. And so when you look at what he brings to the table, he's clearly one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the game, as far as top 3, top 4 quarterbacks in the game, as far as I'm concerned. He's right up there with Tom Brady, with Drew Brees. Not that, to me, Aaron Rodgers, talent-wise, is above everybody. But I look at Russell Wilson, and what he brings to the table, and I'm just saying to myself, excuse me, Pete Carroll and those boys have asked an awful, awful lot of him. And that's why I put it at 90%, because I think he's the one that's kept them relevant as the Legion of Boom has been dismantled.
You who lamented the dismantling of the Legion of Boom. You who pointed to the fact that that there were elements in a split locker room, in a divided locker room, that felt they wanted the quarterback to be the hero and wound up losing a Super Bowl.
What does that have to do with
because
Russell
of it?
Wilson?
Turn around and now give him 90% of the credit.
What does that have to do with Russell Wilson? That's Pete Carroll. That's not Russell Wilson's fault.
Well, if it was 90% of his responsibility for their success, then they would have won the Super Bowl going to him, and it wouldn't have been a problem, right?
Well, I didn't absolve him for throwing the interception.
Look, Russell Wilson's a Hall of Fame quarterback in his prime. He's a superstar. Not just as far as you or I are concerned. That's the fact of the matter, and the numbers support that. You can't say 90% is the quarterback. Here's the thing. This year, they finally rebuilt the offensive line. It finally came to fruition, the resources they put into it since that disastrous Max Unger deal when the line fell apart and they traded Max Unger for Jimmy Graham, their center, and the line fell apart. Their defense was solid. They had a good running game. They have a decent enough receiving core, and they have Russell Wilson, right? Russell Wilson is by far their most important player. Even toward the end of the era of the Legion of Boom, as that defense declined a little bit, Russell Wilson was their most important player. Like Tom Brady, he went from game manager, big on third downs early in his career, to a legitimately great quarterback by now he's 30 years old. But really what you're looking for in any organization, the GM, the coach, and the quarterback. That is always the structure you're looking for. And Seattle's got it. John Schneider, the job he's done drafting, and this goes back to, 7 or 8 years now. That includes the Legion of Boom and all that, and where he got them in the draft, and how he's kind of remade the team on the fly without them ever stinking, really. If you look, the closest thing the NFL has to the closest thing the NFC has to the Patriots in the AFC is the Seattle Seahawks, because of John Schneider, Pete Carroll, and Russell Wilson. The most important player, but 90% of the success is ridiculous.
Only reason I say that, because I'm not being as literal as you are. I say 90% because, to me, everything you said about the Seahawks absolutely falls apart if Russell Wilson isn't there. That's what I primarily mean, based on who Pete Carroll is and how much he has leaned on this guy. It's not. I don't ignore the fact they had the #1 rushing attack in the NFL. You had Carson running in the backfield. You had Mike Davis running in the backfield. You had Rashad Penny running in the backfield. They were the #1 rushing attack. So obviously there were other components that contributed to their success. But everything is predicated around Russell Wilson. If you came to me, the reason why we wouldn't say that about New England is because Bill Belichick has proven himself to be so great in so many different ways that we wouldn't do that with Tom Brady. In New Orleans, we look at Drew Brees. As good of a coach as I think Sean Payton is, I think Drew Brees deserves 90% of the credit for his success in New Orleans.
Even Cam Newton, when he won the MVP and was voted by his peers the best player in football, over the second half of that season, Russell Wilson was better than Cam. Russell Wilson is a great quarterback in his prime, and they have until April 15th to get this deal done?
And they better. And they better.
I just
He
want-
deserves
Molly,
every
the
penny.
Giants have two first-rounders. Would
Yeah.
you give it up for
Yes.
Russell Wilson?
100%.
Me too.
Yes, I would.
Me
100%.
too.
And I love that idea, but he shouldn't want them to back up the Brinks truck. Guys, top 6 highest paid quarterbacks didn't even make the playoffs. You brought up Bill Belichick. The reason they have that flexibility is because Tom Brady takes pay cuts.
My retort to that would be this. I'll go the Kobe route from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, when you're talking about building, particularly in a cap-strap league like the NFL, I understand that thinking.
building out the
but
roster.
when they didn't pay you, and they've proven to make questionable decisions,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm taking all the money I can get. Because when I save you money, what's it doing for me? So I might as well get paid.
Yeah, and like the Packers throughout a lot of Aaron Rodgers' tenure, when they wouldn't bring in those free agents, the Seahawks are building through the draft and trying to do it the
Aaron
right way.
Rodgers didn't make the playoffs.